Your salary went up 20% last year. 11 months later, you look at your account and it looks exactly like it did before. Same balance. Same tightness in your chest on a Sunday night. Where did it go? A slightly nicer apartment, a slightly nicer car, slightly nicer dinners. Nothing dramatic, nothing you could point at and call a mistake. That's how lifestyle creep works. It never arrives as a bad decision. It arrives as a series of extremely reasonable ones, and by the time you notice, the raise is gone and it's load bearing. So the question isn't whether you'll get money. You will. Some raise, some bonus, some good quarter. The question is what it turns into on the way through you. And there's one filter for that. What does this give back to me? Money, time, capability, or just image? Because there are only two kinds of spending. The first gives you a feeling that lasts about 2 weeks. 2 weeks. And the new thing becomes the normal thing. And you're back at baseline. Except poorer. The second pays you for the rest of your life. Most people upgrade what other people can see. The people who stay wealthy upgrade what compounds. Mentors and network. You're going to pay tuition either way. Every lesson you need has a price on it, and the only variable is the currency. You can pay in money, or you can pay in years of trial and error. That's the whole choice. Mentorship isn't a shortcut in the cheating sense. It's a currency conversion. You're moving the bill out of the column you can't refill and into the column you can. 3 tiers, and you should be operating on all 3. The paid mentor, a coach, a consultant, someone whose time you buy, which means you get to make demands of it. People underrate this because paying for guidance feels like admitting something it isn't. It's the most honest transaction in the category. They owe you results. You owe them money. And nobody has to pretend it's a friendship. The exchange, someone senior who gets something back from you energy, execution, a skill you have that they don't. This works, but only if you're honest with yourself that it's an exchange. Proximity, being in rooms where people are better than you, conferences, communities, memberships. The one that looks like an expense on the statement and behaves like an asset in your life. Now, how to do it wrong, would love to pick your brain. Any advice for someone starting out? That's a request to be carried. Nobody answers it. And the people who do answer it aren't the ones you wanted. How to do it right, bring one specific question. The kind that proves you've already done the work and hit a real wall. And bring something you can contribute. Anything. Time, a skill, an introduction, a piece of work done for free. The asymmetry is the point. You're not asking for charity. You're opening an account. And the cost nobody prices staying inside a peer group that isn't going anywhere, that has a number attached to it. You just never get the invoice. Which is why money spent to be in a room with the right person is almost always profitable. Flights, dinners, memberships. It looks frivolous on a spreadsheet, and it isn't. Buy back your time. Money is printable. Governments do it constantly. Skills are learnable. Health, to a degree, is recoverable. Time is the one resource that has never once in the history of the universe been manufactured. You cannot make more. You can only take it back from things that don't deserve it. So let's make that concrete. Take your annual income, divide it by roughly 2,000. That's a rough hourly rate. Not perfect, but close enough to be dangerous. Now look at your Saturday. You spent 3 hours cleaning your apartment. Someone would have done it for a fraction of that number. You didn't save money. You spent your most expensive hours doing your cheapest work. That's a loss. It's just a loss that never shows up on a statement, which is exactly why it's invisible, and exactly why it goes on for years. There's a ladder here, and most people never climb past the first rung. Cleaning, then laundry, then food, meal prep, groceries delivered, whatever removes the decision. Then a virtual assistant for the administrative sludge, the scheduling, the forms, the calls you keep not making. And at the top, hire someone to do the thing you hate most. Not the thing that's hardest. The thing you dread, because the thing you dread doesn't just cost you the hour it takes. It costs you the 2 hours you spend avoiding it, and the bandwidth you spend dreading it, and the small tax it puts on everything else you do that day. Now, the psychological trap. You're going to say, I can do it myself. Of course you can. That was never the question. You can also walk to another state. Being capable of something is not an argument for doing it. It's just an argument that you have the option. The entire point of money is to start declining options. And then the part where almost everyone fails. The time you buy back has to go somewhere. If you outsource your cleaning and spend those 3 hours scrolling, you didn't buy time. You bought a slightly more expensive version of scrolling. You converted dollars into nothing, and you'll do it every weekend, and you'll never once feel the loss. Buy the hours, then decide in advance what they're for. Both halves, or don't bother with either. Health. This is the only asset you own with unlimited downside. Your portfolio can go to zero and you rebuild. Your reputation can go to zero and you rebuild. Your career can end and you start another one. This one goes to zero and there is nothing left to rebuild with. And the returns inside this category are wildly uneven, so the order matters. Sleep first. Nothing else is close. The mattress. The blackout curtains. The temperature. The lighting in the 2 hours before bed. This is the highest leverage money you will ever spend. And it's the money people skip, because a mattress isn't a story you tell at a party. You spend a third of your life on that surface. A third. Run the cost per hour and it will embarrass every other purchase you made this year. Then food. Not supplements. Not exotic powders. Actual food. Prepared consistently. The consistency is the expensive part, and it's the part money can genuinely solve. Then a coach. Someone who watches you move and tells you what you're doing wrong. You cannot see your own form. You cannot audit your own effort. Everyone who ever got genuinely strong got outside eyes at some point. Then screening. The annual physical, the blood work, the age-appropriate scans your doctor keeps mentioning. This is where the paradox lives. People will spend $1,500 a year on a phone they replace annually and refuse to spend $500 finding out what's happening inside their own body. The phone gets upgraded on a schedule. The body gets checked when something already hurts. And then the ones nobody talks about, teeth, eyes, mental health, all three quietly set the texture of every single day. And all three get deferred forever, because they're never quite urgent. Here's the thing to hold on to. Health compounds exactly like money. Same math, same invisibility. A good decision today does almost nothing today. It does everything in 20 years. And a bad one is identical. It costs you nothing now, which is precisely why you'll keep making it. Nobody notices compounding while it's happening. In either direction, tools and environment, the same hour, in the hands of the same person, is worth double or half depending entirely on what's around them. 2 rules between them, they cover most of it. If it sits between you and the ground, don't cheap out. Shoes, chair, mattress. 3 objects that hold your entire body up for the entire duration of your life. And people will spend more on a weekend than on any of them. If you touch it 8 hours a day, don't cheap out. Laptop, monitor, keyboard, desk. The interface between your hands and your work. If you do knowledge work, this is a carpenter's saw, and you'd never watch a carpenter save $200 on a dull blade and call it thrift. You'd call it what it is. Environment counts too. And here's the reframe. Your commute doesn't cost you gas money. Your commute costs you years. Run it. An hour each way. 5 days a week. Across a working life. And you land on a number measured in years of waking existence spent inside a metal box. Moving. When you price a shorter commute, price it in life, not in rent. But this category has a failure mode, and I want to name it, upgrading tools is not the same as collecting tools. A third monitor does not make you better. A more expensive keyboard does not make you better. At some point, the upgrade stops being a tool and becomes a hobby that resembles work. And it's a seductive hobby because it feels like progress right up until you notice you've spent 4 months optimizing a workspace you barely work in. Buy the good version once, then go use it. Books and knowledge. The math on books is absurd. $20 for 20 years of someone's hard-won experience. Compressed, edited, indexed, and handed to you by a stranger who will never meet you. There is no other transaction in the economy with that ratio. If books cost $2,000 each, they would still be underpriced. The only reason we don't treat them that way is that cheap things feel cheap. But here's the mistake almost everyone makes. People buy books to own them. The shelf becomes the point. The purchase becomes the accomplishment. Understand what a book actually costs you. It isn't $20. It's 8 hours of your attention, the most expensive thing you have, and you're going to spend those 8 hours on something a podcast guest mentioned in passing. So the conclusion isn't buy fewer books. It's choose more carefully and then go deep. The price filter is meaningless. The time filter is everything. And expand the category while you're here. Books are the cheapest form, not the only one. Real courses, the expensive, structured, someone actually reviews your work kind, not the video library you'll abandon in March. Certifications, where the certification means something in your field. Industry conferences, paid research and data subscriptions that hand you information your competitors simply don't have. Same transaction every time, money for compressed experience. And the stopping condition, which I'll say plainly, knowledge you don't apply is entertainment in disguise. It's the most flattering form of procrastination that exists, because from the outside and from the inside, it's indistinguishable from work. If you've read 9 books on a subject and taken 0 action, you don't have a knowledge problem. You have a hiding problem, and books are a very comfortable place to hide. Defense. Now the boring one. 4 things. The emergency fund, cash, unoptimized, uninvested. Sitting there doing nothing, that's not a bug. Doing nothing is the job. Every year you'll look at it and feel the itch to put it to work. And every year, the correct answer is no. You're not paying for return. You're paying for the right to never be forced to sell something at the worst possible moment. Term life insurance. If anyone depends on your income, term, not whole. That's a different conversation and a longer one. Disability insurance, the most neglected line item in American personal finance. Full stop. Ask yourself honestly, what's the real probability that you're injured or sick enough to stop working for an extended stretch at some point across a 40-year career? Now compare that to how much thought you've given it. The gap between those two numbers is enormous, and it exists in almost everybody. An umbrella policy, once you have assets worth suing for. Here's the logic underneath all 4. Your largest asset is not your portfolio. It isn't your house. It's your ability to generate income, the machine that produces every other number on your balance sheet. And people will spend 40 hours researching an index fund and 0 hours protecting the engine that funds it. None of this is glamorous. You can't tell anyone about your disability policy. Nobody's impressed. There's no story in it, which is exactly why it gets skipped. Every single time, investing. The core principle, raise your savings rate before you raise your lifestyle, not after. The order inside that sentence is the whole game. Because if the bonus lands in checking and you look at it, it's already gone. You'll find a use for it inside a week. And it'll be a use you can defend. Automate the transfer. Half of it gone before you ever perceive the balance. You cannot spend what you never saw. Then the sequence. It's boring and it's correct. Employer match first. Whatever your employer matches, take all of it. Immediate. Guaranteed. 100% return on that money. And a meaningful share of eligible Americans leave some of it sitting there every year. There is no investment on earth that beats it. None. It's the closest thing to free money that exists in a legal economy. Then high interest debt. Clearing a card charging 20+% is a guaranteed return no market will match. Then the HSA, if you're eligible. Arguably the best retirement account in America. And most people who have one treat it like a spending account instead of the investment vehicle. It can be then a Roth IRA, then taxable brokerage. That's the latter. Now here's the part I actually want you to take away, because it's counterintuitive. Upgrading your investing does not mean putting in more money. It means removing friction. There are 3 leaks in every portfolio. Expense ratios. The gap between a fund charging a tiny fraction of a percent and one charging a full percent, compounded across 40 years, is not a rounding error. It's a number that will upset you if you ever sit down and calculate it. Taxes, asset location, harvesting losses, holding periods. The same portfolio can hand you 2 very different outcomes depending on nothing but which account each piece lives in. And advisory fees, a percentage of your assets. Every year, forever. Whether they help or not, those 3 leaks cost more than most people's stock picking ever gains them. And the warning. Having money does not mean you should invest in a more complicated way. This is the trap that catches people at the exact moment of success. The money shows up, and suddenly the simple thing feels beneath you. Index funds feel like something you've outgrown. So you go looking for the private deal, the exotic structure, the thing with a story attached to it, and more money plus a complicated strategy doesn't produce better returns. It produces faster losses, with more paperwork, what not to upgrade. The controversial part, let's go. Cars, watches, bags, houses meaningfully larger than what your life actually requires. And I know the arguments. So let me just hand you the test. And you can run it yourself, in private, where nobody's watching. If no one could ever see it, would you still want it? That's the whole test. Sit with it. Not is it nice? Not can I afford it? Just does the wanting survive when the audience disappears? For some things, the answer is genuinely yes. And then buy it. I mean that because I want to be fair here. And this is where most people giving this speech get self-righteous and lose the plot. Not every dollar spent on joy is a mistake. A life optimized down to 0 pleasure isn't a well-run life. It's a spreadsheet with a pulse. Money is supposed to do something for you eventually. That's what it's for. The distinction isn't between spending and not spending. It's between deliberate spending and reflexive spending. Between the thing you chose and the thing that happened to you. One of those is a life. The other is a habit wearing a life's clothes. 3 rules to take with you. 1. The 48-hour rule. Any emotional upgrade waits 48 hours. Any asset upgrade happens today. It's asymmetric on purpose. Emotional purchases lose almost all their power when you make them wait, because the wanting was never about the object. It was about the moment, and asset upgrades get postponed forever by people who mistake hesitation for prudence. 2. The 503020 rule for windfalls. Any bonus, any raise, any unexpected money. 50% to investing, 30% to the categories we've covered: the mentors, the time, the health, the tools, the learning, the defense, and 20% on whatever you want, with 0 guilt. Not some guilt, 0. That 20% is what makes the other 80 survivable. And any system without it gets abandoned inside a year. 3. The annual audit. Once a year, sit down and ask one question about every upgrade you made. Did this actually change my life? Be honest, most won't have. Cut those, keep the rest. Almost nobody does this, which is how people end up with 14 subscriptions, a gym membership, a shelf of unread books, and no idea which of it was ever real. Money is not a scoreboard. Money is a conversion tool. That's all it's ever been. It's the thing you use to turn one kind of value into another kind. And the difference between people who stay broke and people who stay wealthy is almost never how much they convert. It's what they convert into. Broke people convert money into objects. Objects that depreciate, that need insurance, that need storage, that need explaining. Wealthy people convert money into time and health and capability and protection. And then they convert those back into more money. Every one of these pays on its own. You don't need the whole list. You don't need to do them in some perfect sequence. You need to do one of them this month with the next money that shows up, instead of doing what you did with the last raise. So, one question, and I'll leave you with it. Your most recent upgrade, the last thing you bought when money showed up, is it paying you interest? Or is it charging you? You already know the answer.